Hi, I think we're back, right?
I think we're back.
Cambridge Inside Out, I'm Judy Nathans.
And I'm Robert Winters.
Okay.
Should I remove my impeach Nixon button?
Yeah, because we
Yeah,
already,
right.
if you missed
Change
this
of
first
theme
segment,
here.
you'll catch it on his
Right.
myriad platforms.
That's right. So we're going to get local now.
Yeah,
Local
so
here.
there was a meeting last night.
That's right. So the city council meeting last night, which was December 9th meeting. They're going to
Yeah.
meet next week.
Right.
Probably the big item on next
Be the
week's
Karp
agenda would be
Petition.
the Karp or Cambridge Site Galleria, whatever they
Because
call
it
it.
has to be
industry.
either voted down.
They can either let it
or
expire
expire.
or vote for it. I doubt whether they would vote it down.
Yeah,
but the
I
thing
think
is,
it's
if
going to be vote for. You don't
yeah,
think they let it expire,
I think
do
it
you?
probably. Well, the thing is I think my guess is that it probably has 7 votes to go
Yeah,
through
it seems
now.
that way.
And the only issue is, are they going to tweak it a little bit more to get enough benefits?
Yeah, I haven't seen the latest commitment letter. But
yeah.
didn't the planning board recommend it?
The planning board recommended it with some suggested changes. On the council agenda for this meeting last night was a copy of the draft of the letter of commitment or memorandum of understanding from the people who are going to be doing the redevelopment down in the Cambridge Site Galleria. I think all the ducks are in a row to actually have the votes to do it. You need 6. I think they could have 7. I imagine Carlone. There is a kind of an irony in having Dennis Carlone vote against something where, in fact, he was the person who was the person who was writing the East Cambridge Riverfront plan that pretty much,
Yeah, but he doesn't like a lot of
things
what. I don't know.
Yeah, listen.
He and Zondervan did not vote for this to go
to proceed
for a second reading, right?
We'll see how it goes, honestly.
So I think if they let it expire and it has to go to the new council, although I don't think that would necessarily. That could change.
My biggest concern about the new council, and again, we're just talking about a shift of a vote or so here, but we could very well be entering into a period where it's almost like what I might call a confiscatory type of council, which basically says we're not going to let you do anything unless you basically pay this much, that much, this much. They're already doing it to some degree.
Oh, right.
The community benefits that are associated with and you can call it community benefits, but in some ways it's like a shakedown. You say, listen, you want to do anything, you got to pay us. Hey Louie, you got to pay us here, and and I think that will probably only get worse.
Well, what's the alternative?
Basically,
to not have any upzoning, to not change zoning.
No. I just think that zoning should. Listen. If a petitioner wants to actually commit to doing things, that's great. But I certainly don't want to dissuade that. And if they feel they can sweeten the pot by doing that, but somehow the notion of saying we're not going to let you do anything until you cough up the cash, to me goes against the whole notion of what zoning is supposed to be about, which is planning. Do you want to plan something? Do you feel that such and such a height or density is a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, but that means planning for the future. And when if a developer comes along though and wants to do something now, and it's not in the zoning, what do you do?
Well, then you set back and you think hard and you say, well, is the zoning really the right zoning? No, I mean zoning is something that changes over years anyway.
Right.
And there's always been some things that were kind of just sort of left derelict in the zoning code that needed to be upgraded. I think a lot of people, Patrick Barrett, for example, but really a lot of other people who argued about the need to upgrade the table of uses for the various zoning districts. Certain things, it hasn't been done.
I know, it's crazy.
So what happens? We get these like one-offs from such and such a property owner who said, well, this is the change we want to make here because we can't wait for you guys to do it.
Well, see, I think that's the issue here is that there is no, but things change. And I think if you have a master plan, it still has to be subject to change.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing is, and there was really good plans for East Cambridge, which during back, we evolved from the days of warehouse liquors and the Sears Roebuck.
Yeah.
And Leechmere sales,
right?
To
the Best Buy and
to the Cambridge Site Galleria,
very nice for many years.
The Vellucci Fountain,
So what is the big change here? Height and density or use?
I think nobody was ever going to object.
It's always been a commercial zone, right?
More almost industrial, really.
So why are they allowed to go to a certain height without having an upzoning petition?
I think they're already probably at the current
I see.
maximum height.
I
Maybe not
see.
uniformly,
Okay,
right? Maybe there are some things that they could do within current zoning, but the thing is I
they
think
want to go beyond that.
right. I think back, if we were talking about 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
which is I think probably the vintage of the zoning that exists there
Well,
today,
see,
maybe
that's
even
the
more.
problem right there. 30 years ago, you didn't
Well,
have this
maybe-
need for housing, the need for
No,
transit.
there was always a need for housing, but the
Yeah,
thing
but-
is that
right.
the notion of building something like a shopping mall
Yeah,
and integrate it with housing is something people simply wouldn't have thought to do,
well, that's true.
right? It
yeah.
just wasn't part,
And now
it was
it's
all
the
about
trend across the
segregation
country.
of uses. So
You're right.
we put all the residential stuff here, we put the industrial stuff here, we
Commercial,
commercial
retail
here,
stuff
office
here. Yeah.
here, whatever. But the thing is, mixed-use zoning has become very much
All
more
over,
the,
yeah.
the rule and the exception in terms of forward thinking, I think. I
What's
suppose.
all these malls around the country that are
They were
they're
collapsing.
collapsing because of e-commerce, because of lots of
Yep,
things.
that's right.
And,
right.
yeah.
So you see, I think I think they finally got some approval for some mixed use projects in Newton of all places.
Really?
To allow, yeah.
'Cause there was a
Oh
big,
yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
and now there's some of the residents are going to try and block it too.
Yeah.
But the thing is that the Newton City
Right
Council
size Newton, I think
actually
it's called,
voted in favor of
Yeah.
it, and the right size Newton wanted to stop
Right,
it, right?
right.
But the thing is down around Newton Upper Falls area,
Mhm.
they're
Oh, I
actually
was
putting in
there.
a mixed housing,
I was just
retail,
there.
whatever,
I'm trying-
really
where,
significant.
do you know? Is it near Route 9?
Yeah, just further,
Okay.
a little south of Route 9, and you got to go up around. I forget the name of the streets, but the thing
Yeah.
is so. But the thing is, you look all around the country. I mean,
Yeah.
mixed use rehabs of shopping mall areas
being done everywhere.
is being done all over
Yeah.
the place, and so why not in Cambridge as well?
Right.
But there are some issues that people have about
Mm-hmm.
how high is too high.
Are there
How
going to be
dense is
lab
too
buildings
dense?
in there?
Yeah,
I mean, all
right.
this
There
stuff.
are legitimate questions.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should be dismissive and just.
No.
I mean, there's some who just basically there's a kind of a new trend toward just more and more and more, higher, denser,
Yeah.
denser. But I think that that's probably not something that most people actually want to
Right.
sign on with, even those people who are okay with some additional density,
Right.
some additional height. So
Right.
where's the sweet spot? Where's the balance? I don't know. But this is why we have elected officials. So hopefully they will, in their great wisdom, they'll take a vote next week, and then we'll sort of move on from there.
Yeah.
I mean, something's got to happen, and if you can get a revitalized Third Street that,
I think that's
becomes-
important, because right now it's just a corridor that doesn't
no,
really
I think
invite anything.
listen,
Yeah.
4 or 5 years from now, if that project gets happened, and then the complete facelift of where the
Sullivan?
Leechmere Station is
Oh,
currently.
oh, right, that's, yeah.
So that'll be moved to the other side of the highway within a year and a
Lots
half.
of changes.
And then that whole where the turnaround is on the trolley line, that'll become something completely
Sullivan
different.
Courthouse is new.
And the
there.
Sullivan Courthouse is going to be, that project will
Will always
proceed
be an ugly
as well.
building in the sense of its
Yeah,
height, but
yeah,
maybe they
but
could
hopefully
change
it'll
some
be
of it.
a productive
I
use.
heard they're gonna knock off a few floors, is
Yeah,
that
that was
true?
part of the deal. They went from
Yeah.
24 to 20 or something like that.
Makes a difference.
I think it's basically knocking off where the jail part was.
Well,
So
that would be good.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
It
the
is
jail
pretty
ain't going
ugly.
back anyway,
Yeah,
right? But there is some need for revitalization in that part of Cambridge, and I hope something happens. And and I hope I hope that they don't approve something that everybody's irate about, but do something.
yeah.
So-
I really hope it doesn't, I hope it's not left to expire.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that would be a mistake.
Yeah. Now another thing that was long awaited finally came back around. I think the city council passed, I forget exactly when now, was a surveillance ordinance.
A
Right?
year ago. No?
Was it?
I don't know. It was in the past, it was this term, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was about a year
And
ago.
and they immediately put out press releases trying to
Yeah.
pat themselves on the back for being the first
ACLU
place to
was-
do
yeah,
it, right? But the thing is, part of it also gave a certain amount of requests to the city manager to come back with policies for individual departments, most specifically the police department.
Okay.
And there's always been this sort of the unsettled question about exigent circumstances, which pressing circumstances
That would
where-
allow the police to not have
to-
to inform.
right, so where
yeah.
they could use surveillance
Right.
tools and then inform council afterwards, right?
Is that like license readers? Do we have those? Are we allowed to use those?
I don't even know, but I know that the thing is, there's been this kind of a twisted trend. We want to make sure you can't do this in your own house. You can't hook up a gas hookup. You can't do this and that. But oh my goodness, God forbid we should actually photograph your license plate, right? But the thing is so I mean, and I'm a person who's okay with some of the surveillance technologies as long as it's done in good faith. And actually can help keep us a little safer. But the city council has actually voted against things like cameras.
Right. They've been given money for it and then not used it.
we got equipment from the federal government. We could put them on buildings, but you're not allowed to turn them on.
So what do the police do? They go to the stores that have them, and then that's how they catch criminals.
So in this,
really,
kind of almost, it's like the ultimate hypocritical state.
It is,
We have a situation now where, in fact, police do use surveillance equipment, but it's all privately owned in private buildings. But we can't use the stuff which might actually improve it and make it better. But we can't use the city-owned stuff, right?
Because of what might happen with it. But I don't know.
But they're actually solving crimes.
And but they could probably do a better job.
They could do a better job if they had a little bit more freedom, and hopefully they will.
That's one thing.
It's true, right? So anyway, so this surveillance use policy came back, and it was pretty voluminous. It was.
Did you? I couldn't.
I kind of skimmed it, but the thing is, every city, the police department, traffic and parking, everybody.
But it's
had to
already
report.
an ordinance, isn't it?
Right, but the individual departments still had to
so
say
it's not a
how
complete ordinance, or it could be amended.
Well, they would still have to provide annual reports about how they use things.
Oh, that's right. And so it's right.
And there was like this standard list of questions that every department had to do. So the reports came in,
and people had problems with it.
Right. And I think it's still a little bit unsettled about can the police department actually move forward in exigent circumstances.
Right.
Without city council approval.
What was the thing with facial technology? That was a big issue.
That's actually something that's really evolving, and I don't know what the status of that particular technology is. I think the police commissioner said we're not really interested in it, but I think that's what he said. I'd have to double check. But the there are some city councilors, I think, who would love. I mean, there was one city councilor a few years ago who openly spoke about how we shouldn't even have police.
What?
Because they were.
I bet
they were
I
just
that was, but we won't say.
Yes, we won't say, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, well,
Oh, I remember that.
And then there was Vice Mayor Benson at the time who was basically saying, I don't know about that because I kind of think I have children, we go through Central Square, and I kind of want there to be a little more enforcement on some things, right? So there are these sort of competing philosophies amongst our local elected officials about, even to the point of do we need police, or how much power should police have to do things like surveillance, even surveillance that has a very high likelihood of actually solving some crimes. I'm reminded there was a murder in a place down where the body was found on the walkway. What is it called? Lomasny Way. It's the extension of 6th Street. This is some years ago. And they actually had footage, which actually led them back to looking in the building nearby. And then when they actually went in there, they actually smelled cleaning solvents, whatever.
Oh my gosh.
They went into an apartment and they arrested the guy who was actually
the murderer. Because they saw the...
so there was actually some available, but I think it was privately owned, you know. So anyway, I just think if you're going to be using surveillance that's privately owned, then you should be free to augment it with publicly owned equipment as well. If you can sort of basically fill out your network so you can actually have appropriate coverage. And and if anybody's caught abusing, well, you sort of put them in the stocks in the town square, right?
But how would you catch them abusing it?
Well, I mean, that's why I think it's a good idea that there's reporting. So they say this is what we're using. This is more or less how we're using it, as long as you don't compromise.
But those public cameras are permanently off.
I think that's still true.
And that discussion is gone.
Yeah.
It's not going to be brought up again.
I don't think you're going to see it in the next 2 years.
It probably doesn't even work anymore. I mean, it's been out there. I mean, don't they have to be retooled or something?
Well, maybe they sold them off for scrap. Who knows?
I don't know.
I figure we'll never use them otherwise. So anyway, so that was one item that came in, and the thing is that since I think that's not a zoning amendment. This is an ordinance, a surveillance ordinance, just a municipal ordinance, and this is really more of a policy, but I think that there may still be some council approval necessary for it to be established.
There was the woman from the ACLU, Jade Crockett, I think, she
Yep.
had cautionary, and this guy from Digital Fourth, which I had never heard about, but he sounded also disappointed by the reports. So I guess there's work to be done somewhere.
Definitely. Now, there was another, I think, a rather big item that came through in the form of a report from the city manager, which has to do with the latest Nexus Report. Right? So the way...
Let's not put people to sleep. Explain what that is.
Okay, so the basic idea is that whenever there's commercial development, not housing development, commercial development,
right?
There is a presumption that when you do commercial development, it creates jobs, which is a good thing. But then the people who want to work there may want to live here, so it means there will be a spillover effect on the community, which might cause either displacement or increase in rents or housing costs or whatever. So you might say, well, okay, that's a detrimental effect, depending on how you look at it.
Right.
So the thing is that there's a mechanism where, in fact, you can establish what they call linkage fees or linkage payments, so that when you build the new development, then the city can exact a price out of you that can be used. I think it must be used specifically for things related to the problematic impacts of the new commercial development. Okay, so typically where that money would go would be toward affordable housing developments, right? Though I think that something
I thought there was job creation.
Well, not in the past. So
okay.
So the sort of the latest wave of amendment, and this is actually part of the zoning ordinance. So the latest wave is actually a change which would actually create a job linkage fee. So it would specifically be utilized toward not just new housing development, but also job training and placement.
Not within the industries in those developments, though. Or it could be related.
It could be related, yeah.
Like if you need people in these fields, then we'd like to see training in those fields.
Linkage just basically says
the money
there is an impact. They have to pay an impact fee. But the city does not, under state law, you can't just arbitrarily say, give us $500 a square foot and have it be so onerous that, in fact, no commercial development ever happens.
Right.
So the only way you can actually set or modify these fees is there has to be a legitimate study about, connecting the what the actual impact is.
I see.
And that's what this Nexus study is.
And is it done every few years, or is it done?
Well, it perhaps should have been, and now apparently that's when they last did the change of about 3 years ago.
2015 or something.
Yeah, or 2 or 3 years ago. It was there was a presumption that it would now be done regularly. I think every 3 years.
Right, because then 3 years ended.
But prior to that, the previous rate had actually been sitting around for about 15 or more years. And then so there was a big jump when they increased it.
When you say rate, the amount of money per
square foot of new commercial development.
And where does that money go to? It doesn't go into the general fund, does it? I mean, does it go to specifically those categories?
Even if it goes into the general fund, it's earmarked.
To be earmarked for that.
Yeah, so it must be used for those specific purposes. So anyway, that's and then I think they also put in a inflationary factor, so there would be automatic increases in the intervening years. All right, so the latest, and at the time of the debate, there was a sort of maximum legally justifiable rate that was published, which was something like $25 a square foot, but then the council voted for, was it 15 or something like that, because there was a recommendation from the consultant who did it then that said that would be the one that would actually balance out all interests and not squelch development. And would be the one that would
add $1 a year or something.
Yeah, and then there would be, plus there would be a
CPI.
Like a CPI. Yeah. It would be indexed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the latest one comes in and says, well, now the maximum allowable that could be justified under perfect circumstances would be somewhere on I forget, it was something in the order of $30 and something, or $34.
$34 and something, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're up about $35, but then the recommendation was for something more in the about 19 or something. Or was it 20, was it 25? No, maybe it was 30 something, right?
No, it was 34 originally.
Right, so,
Yeah.
so the part of the discussion at last night's meeting was saying, well, it says here in the report that we could jack it up as high as 34, so why aren't we doing that?
Yeah,
And it was like a carbon copy of the discussion that happened several
3
years
years
ago,
yeah.
where it said like, well, we could jack it up to 25, but why are we only jacking it up to whatever, right?
Yeah,
You know, and you know, it almost wants to ignore the sort of the detail work that from the consultant that says, well, there are reasons why maybe
Yeah.
The wiser course of action would be to put
and
it at
it's,
a lower
and
amount.
it's
with
higher now than it
index.
is in Boston and Somerville, I think. But
Yeah.
then someone objected to the fact that the same consultant has done these studies for these.
Yeah, well, which would
Anyway.
mean that it would have a pretty good
Yeah,
feel
actually,
for what actually makes most sense.
Okay,
And you know, the truth of the matter is, even though we like to think that the economy is booming and
yeah,
we're, you know, it's, you know, the sky's the limit, everything's going up, is that recessions have happened.
and people say it's bound to happen.
Yeah, and if you wrap into the zoning code
Yeah,
a certain
something
rule,
prohibitive, yeah.
right? And then you know there wouldn't be any political mechanism, political
Yeah.
chance of reducing. It'll only go up. So the thing is that then if there was a recession, it pretty much says you're going to just stop
Okay,
all.
so but let me ask you,
growth.
does this study take into account what's happened in the last 3 years and if there has been any job creation?
It
Or is
would.
that a
It would
separate
have
thing?
to. I mean, the thing is, if the
That's
consultant,
in that study?
I don't know, but the thing is, that if this consultant was worth his weight
He should
in
be
salt,
looking at
and
results,
my understanding
right?
this is a very
Right, people-
reputable, then they have to take into account the actual economy and what's actually happening, and what is feasible and what is
No,
sensible.
but what has, I mean, has anything happened in the last 3 years since they last did this?
You know, I
Like,
think
have
that
jobs
yes,
been-
yes.
But who reports on that? That may not be in this report.
No. The thing is that when you go in there, I forget when you make the payment. Do you get it when you get the occupancy permit? Do you get it
Oh,
when you
I
get
see,
the
you have to,
building
you have to
permit? I
use
don't know.
benchmarks?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. So
all right.
when does the
So
dollars
maybe it
come
is in this
flowing
study?
in?
I don't know, I'll have to look at it.
Right. So there
It's
has
like
been
80
money
pages
with
or
every
something.
bit of
Yeah.
commercial development, not residential development.
Right, it's all commercial.
There's money has been
Right.
coming in under the existing rules at the existing rates, right? One thing it's kind of similar was when they were talking about the inclusionary zoning. This is like incentive zoning versus
Yeah.
inclusionary zoning. Inclusionary zoning isn't about coughing up cash. It's
No.
about coughing up housing
Actual
units.
units, yeah,
Right, which are dedicated subsidized housing units.
permanently.
Right.
Yeah.
So the thing is those ones right there, when they jacked it from 15% nominal, which was for all practical purposes, really meant less than 12%
Yeah.
actual, and they jacked it up to a flat 20,
Right,
right? Then was speculation that in fact that might actually pretty much put a halt to any of these large-scale residential developments.
not, it hasn't done that.
Well,
I
actually,
don't know, has it?
I know that there's one that's being built under the existing rules, but I think that might have actually been established before the 20%
Oh.
was made law. So I don't know really whether the 20% is an economically sustainable figure and there's another thing too, which is from a public policy point of view, which is that if you demand that a housing developer must have 20% inclusionary zoning units, and then that property needs some return on the investment. I mean, they're not doing this for charity. The only way you make up for that is you make the other units, the other 80% of the units, a little more luxurious.
Well,
or
isn't
you
that what's
charge higher.
happening?
That's
Are
exactly
you
what's
saying Mass
happening.
and Maine was before the 20%?
Yes.
It was?
Yes. So
What
that
about
was
10 Essex?
so.
Well, that's a smaller.
These were all permitted before the change.
Really?
Yes.
I thought the change has been at least
Nope.
2 years old.
But these were all
Oh,
permitted
you're right.
before
I
that.
see. So, do
Right.
we have an example of any 20% one?
Well, actually, Mass and Maine was a negotiated 20, but the thing,
Oh.
but they got a lot of height and density as a
Oh,
result
right.
of
So
that.
they agreed
Yeah.
to do that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But people do talk kind of about income inequality and are we living in two cities of the rich and the poor? Well, the policy of saying we're going to set aside this
Yeah.
20% to subsidize, which will necessarily make the other
Yeah.
80%.
Or the retail on the bottom be expensive. Isn't that the other thing?
Well, actually,
Or
I
no?
think the exemption of ground floor retail was something that was sort of
Oh.
independent of that.
Oh, that's good, actually.
Where the
that they did
where
that.
the
Yeah.
desire is that a property developer would not turn that exempt ground floor retail into a real serious profit center.
Good.
It should be viewed more almost like a utility of the building, sort of like the boiler
I'm
room,
glad.
right?
That's a good thing.
But there's no mechanism in place to enforce that. It's all based on goodwill.
Oh.
Yeah,
Wow.
otherwise it would be rent control, and rent control is not
that's
legal
true.
in Massachusetts.
And meanwhile, there's a lot of empty storefronts that already exist, and now we have all these bottoms of these developments that are for lease. And
Right.
it just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, but the thing is,
More daycares coming our way,
Uh,
and
that's-
yoga
it's
studios,
it's
and
true. I mean,
bar,
that
and
is
Soul
viable
Cycle,
retail.
and
Viable retail. It's
yeah,
true. It's
all
true.
these things we don't need.
Yeah.
I don't need.
This part of me says a good recession might actually fix this.
Oh,
But
please.
we don't really want
Yeah,
a good
okay.
recession. But sometimes that actually balances things out and does the necessary
It's true.
economic corrections to make things a bit better.
Yeah.
But it's still, the jury is still out on whether the inclusionary zoning
It really
is actually
works.
going to be economically sustainable in the long haul. I really don't know. I think it probably will be.
Is
but
that an ordinance, the inclusionary?
it's part of the zoning ordinance.
Okay,
yeah.
so that would, if they wanted to change that, it would mean another petition or something?
The problem with that is that
Yeah.
to change it, you would have to get a 2/3 majority of the council.
Supermajority.
And if you want to make a change to an inclusionary zoning ordinance that would result in
Less-
demanding less housing be
That's
built,
very political.
politically they're just not going to do it. They would basically just say, well, let the housing market rot,
Yeah.
before they would be
No,
willing
I
to
agree.
do
So
it.
that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I have a lot of concerns about any sort of housing initiatives that are
Yeah.
irreversible, practically, and if there are negative consequences, these things have to be really deliberated
Yeah.
and done very thoughtfully
Right.
and very carefully.
Okay, we
Yeah.
only have like less than half a minute left. I'm not going to be here next week. I think Patrick will be
Patrick
your
should be
co-host.
here, yeah.
Then after that, CCTV is closed. It's like Christmas
So
Eve,
we're gonna
New
take
Year's
off
Eve,
2
all
weeks.
these things.
Yeah.
2 weeks, and then I'm not here that following.
Yeah.
But hopefully Patrick
We'll
will.
figure
and I'll
something
be back
out.
in a month or so.
Yeah. We're
So-
going
but
to
we're-
Disney World.
So we will not be around for a little bit. No,
Right.
he'll be around next week.
Yeah, we'll
Not
be
me.
back. Yeah.
All right.
All right. So anyway,
Bye.
see you soon on Cambridge Inside Out.